Hello, friends. Very good evening and welcome to Time's CMAT 2026 analysis. The exam was just conducted today, and we'll go deep into the pattern, the kind of topics that were covered, what the level of difficulty of the questions was. Am I audible, friends? Is the audio video good? Are you able to see me? Are you able to hear me? If you give me a confirmation, I'll share my screen and we can go ahead. Just a sec, friends. All right, friends. So that's the slide. So as you are well aware, NTA has been administering the CMAT for quite a few years now. Today, Jan 25th, 2026, they had administered the exam. However, unfortunately, there were delays and there were a lot of glitches because of biometric validation at many centers at Hyderabad and in so many other places. What we came to know was instead of the exam being held in the 9 to 12 slot, in a lot of places, the exam didn't actually start till 9:15 or 9:20. And consequently, the exam went on till 12:20 p.m., a whole delay of about 20 minutes. Not just that, I mean, NTA made biometric, that is Aadhaar validation, mandatory for all the candidates. So, all the candidates had to show their hall ticket, they had to get photographed, and then with their Aadhaar number, they had to get their biometrics validated. Now, that's something that takes a lot of time. All of us know that. Now, due to this, what happened was only some people's biometrics could be validated before the exam actually started. So after 12:20, once the exam was over, in a lot of centers, students complained that they made us sit for one whole hour. We could step out of the center only around 1:20 or 1:30 or even 1:40 in some centers. So it's a pretty unpleasant experience for a lot of students. The only good thing being, during the exam, I think most of them did not face too much of a hassle. But yes, post the exam and slightly before the exam started, there were some issues. All right, nearly 70,000 candidates registered for the exam this year. Friends, you have any questions, please keep typing away. I'll keep checking the questions here. Hi, yes, Saima, you're right. Even the system was not working properly. I mean, a few test takers actually had that problem. Hi, good evening, Raghavendra Rao Garu. Good evening. So there's the broad pattern, friends. 100 questions. There was no sectional time limit. The 100 questions were divided into 5 sections: quantitative techniques in data interpretation, logical reasoning, language comprehension, which is VRC, and then general awareness, GK, and innovation and entrepreneurship, a new section that has been added and has been recurring for the past few years, right? There's 100 questions. For a correct answer, you get 4 marks. For a wrong answer, you lose 1 mark, right? It's into 4 minus 1. There are 4 multiple choice questions. Quickly going into the topics themselves. The 20 questions of quantitative techniques and data interpretation, there was only one DI set, friends. One DI set with 3 questions, and it was a very, very easy DI set. There were 4 car dealers and 6 months of data. So it's a simple table with data was given. 4 car dealers PQRS were given, and their 6 months of data, Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June, like that was given. And all the questions were, this total is what percentage of that. This dealer sales in these 3 months are how much percentage more than that, and ratio sort of a thing. 2 questions were percentages based, and 1 question was ratio based. I mean, this paper, at the outset, I would say the quant techniques and data interpretation set, this entire section was so easy. Anyone who's preparing for CAT or any of the other exams should have attempted close to 17 to 18 out of 20 and gotten almost all of them right. It was easy. The entire section was, I could say, easy to medium. Most of them sitters. Just a few difficult questions also, something like that. In percentages, profit and loss. We all know percentage, profit and loss, time and work, time and distance, averages, mixtures. All these are examiner favorites. So even here we see how many? 6 questions out of 20. That's 30% representation. This is something we keep emphasizing and stressing so many times, that arithmetic alone takes 30 to 45% weightage in MBA entrance exams. So you're serious about your MBA, you can never not be serious about this area, arithmetic, right? So all those time students would know how much we emphasize book one topics. Simple equations, RPV, PPL, SICA, time and work, time and distance, averages, mixtures, allegations, and everything, right? This time and work question was a stock question. Three people start working. One guy leaves after 2 days. One guy leaves 3 days before the completion of work. How many days will it take? Averages, mixtures, allegations was also a stock question. There's something acid and water in a certain ratio. How much water, when some water is added, it becomes so much. How much water should be added, kind of a question. Okay. The percentages, profit and loss questions were also fairly straightforward. I wouldn't even call them medium. They're in the easy to medium range. After giving a certain discount, he still makes a profit of so and so. If the cost price is so much, what is the market price, or what is the actual profit he would have made, kind of questions. All right, very easy questions here. In numbers also, we had some really easy but interesting questions. There was one question based on your routine beeping question. There are 4 machines. One of them beeps every 1 hour, one of them beeps every half an hour, one of them beeps every 1.5 hour. Standard LCM question, right? LCM of 30, 60, 90, kind of a thing. And there was one divisibility question. The sum of any 3 consecutive odd numbers will always be divisible by. And there was one question on units digit. That question was something like 402 whole power 240. It wasn't 402, it was something like 204, I think. 204 power 240 plus 204 power 241, kind of a thing. Find the units digit. Very, very basic question, right? You just need to find out the units digit of 4 power 240 and 4 power 241. That's about it. The interesting question, I said easy but interesting question. What I meant was this class. What is this class? There was one question on classification of numbers, and that was pretty interesting. Why? Because such questions rarely come in the actual exam. This question was something like, there is something like a smallest natural number, there is something like a largest natural number, every rational number is always real, and between any 2 consecutive natural numbers there will be a natural number. So they give 4 statements like that and asked which of the following statements are true, like AB, BC, AD, BC, kind of a thing. So that was about numbers, AMA, time and work, PPL. So far, like hardly any resistance or opposition. People would have breeze through these questions so easily. All right. In geometry and mensuration also, one question was very easy. One mensuration question was the volume of a cylinder is given where the radius and height are the same. You could immediately find out pi r square into r is 176/7. You could find out r, and the diameter was asked. Very straightforward question, right? Another question was given, right, with a rectangle was given, a square was given, and a triangle with dimensions was given. You were expected to compare their perimeters and areas. Again, very easy question. In geometry, perhaps the only challenging question would have been this, okay? A right triangle was given, a perpendicular was drawn, right? This part was given as 4, this part was given as 2, right? And this entire part, this length was what was asked. Now, for anyone who attend our basic geometry classes, you remember this is a property we actually discuss. In triangle ABC, where B is the right vertex and BD is a perpendicular drop to the hypotenuse, BD square is equal to AD into DC, right? So this is a straight application of this one. All right, this is 4, this is 2. So this would be how much? Square root of 4 square minus 2 square. This would be 2 root 3. 2 root 3, 4 into 3, 12. 12 would be 2 into something. So this part would be 6. This whole thing would be 8. Right? So yeah, this was a slightly tricky question in geometry, you could say, but the others were very straightforward, honestly. Even this one, it could take a little time. Remember, friends, we have 100 questions in 3 hours, so there's no shortage of time at all. You have enough time to spend on all the questions you need. Then here, in indices and search, we see one question, and we are actually calling it difficult, okay? And which is that question and why is that difficult? Because here we had some really tricky looking expressions. Okay, this was the question. This was what it looked like. Root 5 plus 2 plus root over root 5 minus 2 by root over root 5 plus 1. We were expected to find this value. All right. Now, if someone's speed math is good and they didn't find a very easy way to rationalize it, you could have simply taken root 5 is equal to 2.236. This is 2 plus 2.236, 4.236, square root of 4.236. it is approximately 2.05. This is 2.236 minus 2. This is 0.236. You can get the approximate value as something like 0.48 and so on. But that was a slightly lengthy but and yet proven method. The final answer was root 2 anyway. The simpler method was take this as x, just square x, friends. What do you get when you square x? You'll get root 5 plus 2 plus root 5 minus 2 plus 2 into this will give me 1 by root 5 plus 1. All right. So what do we have here? 2 cancels, minus 2 cancels. 2 plus 2 root 5. 2 into 1 plus root 5 by 1 plus root 5. X square is 2 or x is equal to root 2, friends. So that was pretty efficient. I mean, I'm sure a few students would have absolutely done this. But if you didn't do, if you just took the value of square root of 5 as, 2.236, you would still have absolutely gotten the answer as 1.4 something, final answer. And 1.4 would be root 2 from among the options. This was a good question. This was definitely a challenging question, especially in the exam, right? This question on series, again, depending on whether you were exposed to such questions before or not, you would have found it challenging or not. This one was something like this: 5 by 2 square into 3 square plus 7 by 3 square into 4 square plus so on. Now, for anyone whose eyes are trained on questions like this, hey, this is 3 square minus 2 square. This is 4 square minus 3 square, right? So I can simply write this as 1 by 2 square minus 1 by 3 square plus 1 by 3 square minus 1 by 4 square. You see, all these terms keep getting cancelled. Here, the last term they gave was 15 by 7 square into 8 square. We know 8 square minus 7 square is 15, right? So this will be plus 1 by 7 square minus 1 by 8 square. So all this will cancel. You'll be left with the first term and the last term. Fairly doable. I wouldn't call it a difficult question. If you've practiced, I mean, questions like this are plenty in our material. We give dozens of such questions in our material. And then there was this question from probability, which was definitely enjoyable. Okay, what was this? 4 coins were tossed simultaneously. What is the probability that no 2 heads occur consecutively? Now, this was definitely an enjoyable question, which means I can't have 2 heads here. I can't have head or head or head. I mean, forget about 3. I can't have any 2 heads. Correct? Now, this one, depending on whether you just enumerate it, because see, 2 2s are 4, 4 2s are 8, 8 2s are 16. 2 power 4 is only 16 possible outcomes. You could just enumerate them quickly, or you could just go with the approach, there are 4 coins. Let's assume the first one is head. The second one can't be a head. This has to be a tail, right? Now, this one can be a head or a tail, and depending on that, this one can take 2 values. Depending on that, it will take only 1 value, right? Similarly, let's say the second one is head. This is tail, decided. This is tail because I cannot have 2 consecutive heads. Now, the last one can be head or tail, right? This can take 2 values. Similarly, for H here, you'll have 2 values. For H here, you'll have 2 values. H here, you'll have 2 values or 2 possibilities. H here, you'll have 2 possibilities. So, total, you'll have 8 possible ways in which no 2 heads will be consecutive. 8 out of 16 will be half. That was the answer here. And there was one miscellaneous question. I mean, depending on how you look at it, that question was pretty interesting. A plus 1 by B plus 1 by C minus 9. This is given as 29 by 5. Now, if you've not been exposed to questions like this before, obviously it would be a challenge, right? It's a really nice question. I definitely enjoyed solving it in the exam. All right. So that's more or less about it, guys. This question on indices and search was challenging. Series was fine. Probability was definitely nice. And this question was challenging. The answer here is pretty easy. We could do it some other time. So, and the DICT was very easy. So you please tell me here. At the start, I said about 17 to 18 of these questions must be doable. And that still holds, right? Because barring these 2-3 questions, everything else was very easy, fairly textbookish kind of questions, right? Let's quickly go to the LR section, friends. In LR, I mean, even the LR section was very easy. I mean, if you want to look at the 5 sections, Quant DI was very easy to medium. LR was easy to medium, and verbal was also easy to medium. Then you'll ask me, so what was the challenging section at all? I mean, GK and innovation and entrepreneurship happen to be the more challenging sections actually. Right. In logical reasoning, there was one question on verbal analogy, and that was fairly easy. That question had something to do with, hope is to aspire. So, which of the following has the same relationship? The base word given was hope is to aspire. So the answer was fib is to life, fit to fib is to life. So to hope is to aspire. It was an easy question. Okay. In blood relations, we had two questions which were set based. The only interesting thing here was they were separated. Set based meaning P hash Q means P is the brother of, P star Q means P is the sister of, P minus Q means P is the father of. Four or five such relations were given, and then you had to answer questions. Which of the following means P is the aunt of Q? Which of the following means P is a brother of Q? Kind of questions. Those were two questions. I mean, one question was given somewhere, and the second question was given some 10 questions later. But both were definitely doable. And then there was one normal photograph based question. A person pointed at the photograph and said, the person in this photograph is the mother of my son's wife's daughter. Something like that. Very easy question. How is that person related to the person in the photograph? Father-in-law. However, the exam did not specify the gender of the person. So depending on the name, there was no mother-in-law, so you could go with father-in-law easily, right? There were two questions on missing numbers. Okay, one question was something like this. One question had a table. This one wasn't so difficult, I think. The sum of all the columns added up to 200, I think. And this cell was missing. You just had to find these values. 200 minus the remaining would give you this value. This was easy, definitely. But there was one other question, missing numbers question, which many would have definitely found challenging. Those numbers were something like this. This was one box, okay. This was a 6, 2, that was 40, 15, and 5. All right, that was the first box. And this was the second box. Okay, the second box had 30, 5, 7, 9, and 4. And what comes in the third box? That was the question, right? I mean, people would have definitely struggled here. This was the question mark. This was 12. This was 13. This was 17. And this is 13. Now, see, remember, it's an MBA entrance exam. You're not expected to answer all the questions. So you can be perfectly forgiven for leaving one question. But considering that CMAT has 3 hours, you could always come back to this, try it, and so on and so forth, right? One logic, I could think of was, what is the average of 2 and 6? 4, right? And what is the average? What is this here? The difference of 15 minus 5 is 10. So 4 into 10 is 40. Here, what's the average? 6. The difference is 5. 6 into 5, 30. So what is the average here? 12.5. What is the difference here? 4. 4 into 12.5 is 50. This was a logic I could think of, and 50 was there among the options. So I did a mark it. All right. So this was the second missing number question, and that's the reason I put it as M2D. The first one was easy, moderate, but the second one, this one would have taken time, a lot of trial and error, a lot of attempts, There was one very easy question based on dice. There was something like this. You had to fold it. All of them were numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you fold it, which of the following does it look like? Fairly straightforward, a little bit of visualization, imagination, and you'll get it right. There was one very easy question on direction sense. Initially, you're staring at, you're facing west. Then you turn clockwise, anti-clockwise, and again clockwise, anti-clockwise. Finally, which direction are you facing? Very easy question. I think the answer was southwest here. There was one question based on figure-based Venn diagram. It's one of those triangle, circle, square, rectangle, and all that. 1, 2, 3, 4 represents doctor, scientist, actor sort of a thing. So which of the following represents only these two regions? Very, very easy. You just go there and then identify, okay, this one represents only these two regions. So no time wasted at all. There was one question based on rankings. This one was standing in a line. One person is 14th from the start, the other person is 15th from the other end, and then there's someone standing exactly in between them. So how many people were in the row, kind of a question. Very easy question. There was one question based on syllogisms. Some are all, some are all. See, some A's are B's, some B's are C's. All C's are D's. So finally, easy. I think only one statement there was true. All right. There was one question based on statements and arguments, and one based on assertions and reasoning. Both looked not so easy, frankly. I mean, there were so many easy questions. These two did not look so easy, especially because in this assertion and reasoning based question, the assertion was something like the handles of pressure cookers are made with ebonite. Okay, and the reasoning was ebonite is a good conductor. Now this really falls under general knowledge, right? No one really knows ebonite or whether ebonite is a good conductor or bad conductor. If you could take a guess, you could guess that okay, ebonite is maybe not a good conductor, and that's the reason it's used to make handles of cookers, right? So I mean, there was this small GK aspect to it. Without that additional piece of information, you couldn't actually answer that question and come out, right? So for that reason, I'm saying it is D. But if someone can, based on the context, if you could guess that ebonite is something like plastic or some other material which is an insulator, yeah, you could say yeah, the reasoning is wrong. The second statement is wrong. Similarly, in statements and arguments, also here you were expected to identify the strong argument, which not everyone would have found it very easy. So I'm putting it under a moderate to difficult. In counting shapes, I think both questions were pretty challenging. Okay, one one was like this. Okay, one was like this, and you had to identify how many pentagons were there. How many pentagons are in this figure? So definitely not easy. I think there were 22. No, not 22. This was the other one. Here there were 12, I think. 12 or 16. The answers were 4, 8, 12, 16. I could count till 12. If there were more, please let me know in the comments, right? In the exam. Maybe I'll try it again later. I'll get the correct answer. So how many pentagons are there in this figure? This was one question, definitely challenging. The other question was something like this, okay? The other question was like this. How many triangles are there here? And this whole thing is connected. It stops here. This people definitely found pretty tough. I think the answer here was 22, right? There were options like 18, 21, 22, and even less than that, right? I think 22 was the answer here. 22 was also the largest option. Both of these were challenging. People who have spent a lot of time in a time constrained exam. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to answer these questions. But here, because we're not in a hurry, you could take some time and actually answer all these questions. Hey, hi, Sahil. साहिल सर probability वाला क्वेश्चन बता दीजिए please. Hey, what we did here was, see this, let me just explain that once again. The probability is there are 4 coins and you toss them simultaneously and no 2 of them consecutive of them should be heads, correct? Let me take one case where head comes here, the second case where head comes here, the third case where head comes here, and the fourth case where head comes here, right? When head comes here, only a tail can come here because I cannot have 2 consecutive heads, right? Now, this place is now free. I can have a head or tail, right? If I have a head, this should be tail. If I have a tail, I can have this head or tail, right? This can come in 2 ways, and accordingly, the next one can come. Similarly, once the second place is a head, this is fixed, tail is fixed, tail is fixed, which means the last one can be any of head or tail. If I have a head here, tail is fixed, I can have a head or tail 2 ways here. A head here, a tail is fixed. I can have these two in 2 ways, correct? That's what I'm saying. So 2 ways here, 2 ways here, 2 ways here, 2 ways here. A total of 8 ways. 8 out of 16 is half, Sahil. Does that look good? Are you convinced how we got half probability here? Now, what is the other alternative? We could have just listed down all the possibilities. Out of the 16, there will be 8 possibilities. You can simply list down 2 in an exam. I mean, for example, if I say this is head, this is tail, and next I can have a head, and then this will be a tail. I have a head, I have a tail here, I have a tail here, I can still have a head here. Or I can have head, tail, tail, tail. Now, this looks slightly longer, but in no time you will have all the 8 possibilities. All right, Sahil. So going back to LR, where were we? Yeah, here we were at counting shapes. This was 22. The other one was either 12 or 16. All right. And clocks question was very easy. Okay, in clocks, the only question was at time 3:50, what's the angle between the hands of a clock? We know we have a standard formula for that, mod of 30h minus 11m by 2, right? Where h is the hour and m is the minutes. So we put 3 here, we put 15 here, we'll get the answer straightforward. And then there were 3 questions in coding decoding. One question was table based. Okay, so all these alphabets are coded as these numbers. Okay, and then vowels were not coded, only consonants were coded. So what will this number be coded as? It was easy, it just took a little time. And the other two were normal coding decoding questions. If this word is coded as this, what will this be coded? Very straightforward. Plus 2, plus 4, plus 8 kind of a patterns you could see and immediately answer them. There was one question based on linear arrangement. There were 7 persons sitting in a row. One guy was very clearly given as being at the end of the right end of the row. And then one guy was 3 places to his left. So you follow the logic. There were 3, 4 conditions. Quickly you'll get everything. Finally, who's sitting in the middle of the row? I think the answer was C. I think C was sitting in the middle of the row. So that concludes LR also. Friends, so far, I mean, anyone who attempted in the same order would have felt Quant, QT, and DA was very quick. I mean, I've had students tell me, sir, there were 20 questions. We could do all of them within 30, 35 minutes. I mean, I've had some people doing all of them in 23 to 24 minutes also, right? So you'd really be left with a lot of free time that way. Even LR wasn't very time taking. I think all 20 questions in 30, 35 minutes, you could have done it all. That's like literally 1 hour, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 20 minutes, and you're done with 40% of the paper already, right? So, and then going to the next one, language comprehension. If you were a serious aspirant, even this should have been very easy for you. There were 2 questions, context-based vocab questions. One of them was cast away. The ship was cast away at this point. So what is the meaning of cast away? That was asked. And another phrase was asked. He cooked up a savory tale. What is cooked up? Obviously, concocted. You cook up a story, which you make up a story. So these were easy questions. Okay, castaway means obviously, and shipwrecked, correct? So fill in the blanks, I fill in the blank with the right kind of a preposition. This one was also easy. He brought about his own ruin, kind of. That was the answer, I think. Grammar, surprising. This was one area which would have taken a lot of people by surprise. While the questions themselves were not difficult, they were so basic that they belonged to the first class of grammar basics that no one would have taken them seriously. Okay. I mean, one question was identify the grammatically incorrect sentence, which was easy. One question, identify the grammatically correct sentence, which was also easy. But in this sentence, among these sentences, identify the one which has a positive degree. Identify the compound sentence among the sentences. And there was actually one question on match the following, where sentences were given on the left hand side and their tenses were given on the right hand side. I mean, imagine simple infinitive, present participle, past participle, and gerund. 4 sentences were given and you had to match them with which one was an application of present participle, past participle, simple infinitive, and gerund. So I mean, these are question types you don't usually expect in a lot of exams. We learn them in the first class of grammar basics and we sort of leave it then and there. And then there was one very interesting question again on, identifying simple sentences. Which of the following is true? So a simple sentence has only this, a simple sentence has only this. So 6 questions from grammar, that too, like classic grammar. This would have been a little surprising. All of those who were in touch with their grammar basics, they would have aced it in no time because these are very, very simple and basic grammar rules taught in the first few classes. It's just that we don't expect them a lot, that's all. There was one question, odd sentence out, 4 or 5 sentences were given. And this was slightly tricky. More people would have found it difficult. I think the answer was that Shankar is clever, was always known, something like that. I think it's the way it was phrased. All the others were direct statements. And there was one short 110-word close passage, just a 110 words, and a very easy one. I mean, at 3 places were indicated, place 1, place 2, and place 3. You had to identify which word fit there perfectly. Okay, there was one assertion reasoning question based on compound and complex statements. Again, this I think people would have definitely struggled a little bit if they didn't remember their grammar basics very well. Okay. The parajumble was very easy. There were options. You could immediately identify which one was the correct one. There was a one word substitute. Okay, this one. Someone who is prejudiced in his views and intolerant of opinions of others. This one, if you didn't know all the words, it could have been tricky. The words given were orthodox, traditional, bigot, and ideologue. A lot of them are very close words. Okay, if someone is not very comfortable or very familiar with those words, all of them would have felt pretty close. You would think, oh, orthodox, an orthodox man seems to be someone like that. But not necessarily. An orthodox man is not always intolerant of opinions of others. And then you see traditional, wait, traditional people also might think the same way, or bigot or ideologue, right? So that was there. One word substitute could be slightly moderate to difficult. There was two questions, one from direct to indirect speech. That one was easy, I think. There was one question where you had to identify the passive form, which of the following is a passive form. That was also easy. The RC passage was a very, very short 150 word passage on which there were two questions. The passage was tough. It wasn't so easy, but fortunately the questions were very easy. I mean, you could eliminate just like that. Very quickly, you could pinpoint your answer. There was no complexity in terms of the questions and answers, but the passage itself was not very, very easy. It wasn't a good read or it wasn't an easy read. Now, people could have really struggled if that were to be a 500 word passage, but it was a very short and sweet 150 word passage. All right. So, overall, English is also the overall section is in the easy to moderate level of difficulty zone. People could have breezed through this section, right? Hardly any time, hardly any heavy reading required or any critical reasoning questions that were coming, right? And then if you look at general awareness, like I said a little while back, general awareness and hi Sahil, let me just take you to that question once again. This was the question, right? Let me draw that again for you, Sahil. See this. What we'll do is systematically, let's label them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Sahil, now what I'll do is I'll ignore one triangle at a time and see what I can do. Let's say we ignore this triangle, this triangle AEH is what I will ignore. So do I have a pentagon? 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I actually have a pentagon, something that looks like a diamond, right? So if I ignore one triangle at a time, I'll have 4 such pentagons. Similarly, if I ignore 2 triangles at a time, I will still get a pentagon. This is my pentagon, right? So I'll have another 4, correct? Now, similarly, if I ignore 3 triangles at a time, this is also a pentagon, Sahil, yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are you able to see that? Ignore one triangle at a time, you'll get 4 pentagons. Ignore 2 triangles at a time, you'll get 4 pentagons. Ignore 3 triangles at a time, and you'll get again 4 pentagons. The total is 12. Now, were there more? I'll have to see that again. I'll have to check that again. Prima facie, it looked like 12, but I could be wrong. All right. Does that help, Sahil? Right, I hope. So, and then there were questions on general awareness. I mean, general awareness and entrepreneurship and innovation, these seem to be the toughest sections. I know it feels like an irony, but because the kind of questions covered were pretty vast. As a matter of fact, there were very few very current questions, very few questions from like real current affairs. Some of them are 1 year old, some of them are 2 years old, some who won the ICC Cup 2 years ago, who got the Nobel Prize last year or the year before, who is part of this, who got this prize, and who has the most number of medals in sports. There was one question on Mithila, Bihar, and all that, one cultural question. There was one question on authors and books. This was pretty easy. I think the kite runner Khaled Hussain, that was the easiest one. Once you identify that, there was only one option with that. There was one question on legal knowledge. This was definitely difficult. Two extremely not so daily used legal terms were given, and what do they mean, kind of a thing. Even the historical battles was not so easy. I think there was Battle of Plassey, there was first Battle of Mysore, there was Battle of Tarain, and you had to arrange them in the order, chronological order. There were questions based on science. At least one question was easy because it talked about bioenergy and it talked about molten lava and using that to generate, energy and all that. So here, a very serious candidate should have still done about 10 to 12, no doubt, right? I mean, 10 questions, though, I mean, you have to do at least 10 to 12 if you are preparing GK and all, right? Because see, here you actually have a huge advantage compared to Quant, LRDI, verbal. Here, you either know it or you don't know it. You put in effort, it will take you 5 seconds to mark the answer and move on, and you'll still get the same 4 marks. Unlike other exams where GK no longer exists in the exam, or exams where GK will only be, calculated at the time of, GDPI. Here, whether it is a quant question which will take you 5-10 minutes or a GK question which will take you 5 seconds, you'll still get 4 marks, right? So overall, this was something slightly trickier, a lot of questions, right? Apart from that, I mean, see, in another very interesting thing here in management, POM and financial, what I mean by POM is principles of management. I mean, there was this great man called Henry Fayol, who was called the father of classic management. I mean, he lived in the 1850s to 1920s sort of a thing, right? And he gave 14 principles of management. The first one being division of work, second one, authority and responsibility, discipline, unity of command, unity of direction, subordination of individual, remuneration of personal, and so on. And the last one is esprit de corps. Okay. Now the funny thing is, this is something you only learn in BBA or BBM or in MBA. Nowadays, even MBA grads don't actually learn this, not in most B schools. Henry Fayol's 14 principles of management is what we call them. And in today's CMAT, there were two questions based on principles of management. Okay. Which of the following, I mean, stability of individual, this one. So which of the following is important to reduce attrition? Which of the following means attrition should be less, so that kind of questions. I mean, it was interesting to see out of those three questions, two questions came from principles of management by Henry Fayol, and one question was pretty financial in nature. As someone who's not from a finance background wouldn't have been able to actually answer that question. Okay, which of the following items will be in the capital structure document, kind of a question. Not everyone would know it. Only if you are from a BCom or an MCom background, you would know it. Otherwise, you'd have to leave that, right? So, and then going to the last section, innovation and entrepreneurship, there were questions asked on theories of innovation. This theory of innovation means ambidextrous theory of innovation, if you are trying to recollect, and some government bodies and some government policies with regards to startups, entrepreneurs, and everything. A certain entrepreneur who does like this, what kind of an entrepreneur is this guy? Is he sorted? Does he have good managerial ability? Sort of questions were asked. Kinds of financing, mezzanine financing, there was one question based on that. Venture capitalist strategies, should they invest in the same industry or should they be diversifying, kind of a thing. Design thinking is all of the following except which one, and what are the different stages of startup financing. Some of this is common sense. I mean, even if you are in the know-how, even if you know how the business world works, how startup world works, and if you're just following the news, you could attempt at least half of these questions with common sense. But the other half will still need some thorough preparation, right? As all of our time students would know, we have added a separate module and you have a lot of questions and dedicated content on innovation and entrepreneurship also. Lots of MCQ questions and lots of knowledge sharing happening there. Now, this was definitely more scoring than the GK section. If that's what you're thinking of, this was definitely more scoring than the GK section. The GK section was more tricky, I think, because here, at least with common sense, you can crack some of the questions. At least 4-5 questions you could crack with common sense, but in GK, there's nothing like that, right? So overall, guys, that's a snapshot of today's exam. Quant, LR, and VRC were definitely on the easy to medium side. GK and innovation and entrepreneurship, not so easy, but not so difficult. Innovation and entrepreneurship was like moderate, and GK could be slightly more than that. Right now, quickly, I mean, even a few days ago, we've done a video on, last step preparation for CMAT and top colleges. You know JBIMS, the most sought after college in CMAT, and then you have SIMSREE, J Somaiya, Welingkar, BIMTech Noida, and IFMR, now Kriya University. For JBIMS, for the top three colleges, the cutoffs we put there. For the other colleges, the cutoffs go up and down a little bit. What you can expect is within 5 to 6 days, the response sheet and the provisional key and everything will be made available. You'll be given 2 3 days to challenge it. Yes, just 5 6 days, you'll get your response sheet and the provisional key. You'll have 2 3 days to challenge it. After that, immediately your result and everything will be generated, right? So I hope everyone had a great exam. Stay tuned, friends. We'll be doing a lot more sessions. And you have any doubts, please write in the chat box. Leave your comments. We'll know, like, share, and subscribe. We're doing a whole series of videos dedicated to all the exams and lots of preparation techniques throughout the years. Right? If you enjoyed the session, see you on the other side where we'll join you again for your GDPI preparation for your B schools. Have a good Sunday, friends, and happy preparing for your B school journey.